Kai Evander wiped sweat from his brow as he navigated through the dense foliage of Meridian's equatorial rainforest. The colony moon's dual suns were beginning their descent, casting long shadows through the canopy. As the outpost's head botanist, he'd ventured farther than usual today, tracking a rare flowering fungus that only bloomed during the planet's triennial eclipse. His collection pack was nearly full when the sky flashed crimson. Something pierced the atmosphere overhead, too small for a transport ship, too controlled for a meteor. Whatever it was crashed less than a kilometer away, the impact sending birds and arboreal creatures scattering in panic. Curiosity overcame caution. After 5 years alone at this research station, anything breaking routine was worth investigating. Kai adjusted his path toward the rising smoke plume, thumbing the emergency beacon on his wrist communicator, just in case. The crash site was a smoldering crater where strange metal alloys gleamed among shattered vegetation. And there, half hidden beneath a twisted piece of hull, lay a figure. Not humans. Kai approached slowly. The alien was humanoid but nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent copper-toned skin marked with geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with bioluminescence. What he'd initially mistaken for armor appeared to be part of her body, ridge-like protrusions covering vital areas. Female, he guessed, based on form, though alien biology made assumptions dangerous. A deep gash across her torso leaked viscous blue fluid. She was unconscious but alive, her breathing shallow and labored. "Hello," Kai whispered, knowing she couldn't hear him. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The journey back to his outpost was grueling. Despite her slender frame, the alien weighed nearly twice what a human of similar size would. By the time Kai dragged her through the door of his small research station, his muscles screamed in protest. He laid her on his cot and assessed her wounds. The slash across her torso was deep, but her physiology was already attempting to seal it. Kai cleaned it carefully with purified water, noticing how her skin seemed to absorb the moisture. Her biology was fascinating, adaptively regenerative but clearly overwhelmed by the trauma. While preparing a basic antiseptic, Kai jumped when her eyes snapped open, entirely black except for vertical pupils that glowed amber. She hissed something in a language his translator couldn't process, then tried to rise, only to collapse back with a growl of pain. "Easy," Kai said softly, raising empty hands. "You're injured, I'm trying to help." The alien's gaze fixed on him, suspicious but lucid. Her hand moved to her side, finding the wound partially dressed. "Enemy," she managed in heavily accented standard. "No," Kai replied, relieved she understood some human language. "I found you, your ship crashed." She seemed to process this information, then spoke again, each word deliberate. "Name, Vrisha, Commander, Kalathari, Defense Force." "I'm Kai, human botanist," he gestured around the modest station. "You're at my research outpost on Meridian." Vrisha's expression shifted subtly before her eyes drifted closed again, the effort of communication too much for her weakened state. But before unconsciousness reclaimed her, she grasped his wrist with surprising strength. "They will come," she whispered, "for me." As night fell over the rainforest, Kai sat beside the alien warrior, wondering what forces would soon arrive at his doorstep, and how his solitary life was about to change forever. 3 days passed with Vrisha drifting between consciousness and fever dreams. Kai maintained a vigil, applying cool compresses to her overheated skin and documenting her remarkable healing process. The wound that would have killed a human was already forming a silver-blue scar tissue. On the 4th morning, Kai woke to find Vrisha standing at his research terminal, scrolling through his botanical database with surprising dexterity. She wore one of his spare jumpsuits, comically short on her tall frame but better than nothing. Her posture remained rigid despite her injury. "You should be resting," Kai said, approaching cautiously. "I have rested enough." Her voice was stronger now, melodic despite its gravelly undertones. "My vessel's emergency beacon was activated. My people will arrive within your solar day." Relief washed over Kai. Soon she'd be gone and his peaceful solitude would return, yet something like disappointment tugged at him too. "Your healing capacity is extraordinary," he offered. "I've documented the process if you don't mind. It could benefit medical research." Vrisha turned, studying him with those strange amber-pupiled eyes. "You are a healer." "Botanist, I study plants." Kai gestured to his collection. "This moon has unique flora with potential medicinal properties." "You live alone," she observed, not a question. 5 years now, the Research Foundation sends supplies quarterly, but otherwise, he shrugged. "I prefer it." "A warrior who seeks solitude," something like respect colored her tone. Kai laughed. "I'm no warriors." "You carried me here alone, treated wounds you did not understand, remained vigilant through 3 cycles," her head tilted. "These are warrior virtues." Before Kai could correct her misunderstanding, the proximity alarm blared. On the monitor, a sleek vessel twice the size of any human transport descended toward the clearing. My extraction team, Vrisha said, moving toward the door with newfound energy. Kai followed her outside as the ship settled on massive landing struts. It resembled an iridescent beetle, its hull shifting colors in the sunlight. A ramp extended, and 3 Kalathari warriors emerged, each bearing ceremonial staffs that Kai suspected doubled as weapons. The lead warrior froze upon seeing them. His eyes widened, moving from Vrisha to Kai and back again. He immediately dropped to one knee, the others quickly following suit. Commander, he addressed Vrisha in their language before continuing in halting standard. You have taken the sacred bond during your absence. Vrisha stiffened. What absurdity is this? The warrior gestured toward Kai. He wears your mark, you wear his garments, you share dwelling, the healing bond is evident. This human merely. The High Matriarch will rejoice, interrupted another warrior, rising. Your union strengthens our position with the human territories. Kai stepped forward. There's been a misunderstanding, I only provided medical assistance. The warriors exchanged looks of confusion, then something like awe. The lead warrior approached Kai, studying him as one might examine a rare specimen. You claimed humility about completing the sacred rites, he nodded approvingly, truly worthy. Vrisha moved between them, her stance protective. Enough, prepare the ship for departure. As the warriors retreated, she turned to Kai, frustration evident in her expression. My people have misinterpreted your assistance, she said quietly. In Kalathari culture, what you have done sheltering me, healing me, sharing your dwelling and garments, these actions constitute the initial bonds they believe we are. She struggled with the human concept. Paired, mated. Kai blinked like married. More binding, Vrisha replied grimly. The bond is considered sacred, irreversible. Breaking it would bring dishonor to my house and jeopardize my command. The implications dawned slowly on Kai as the early morning light filtered through the canopy. His quiet life had just become exponentially more complicated. What happens now, he asked. Vrisha's gaze met his, uncertainty replacing her usual confidence. Now, human botanist, you must decide if you will return with us to face my matriarch, as my bonded mate. Behind them, the Kalathari ship hummed with power, waiting to carry them across the stars to a civilization Kai had never imagined joining, especially not as the accidental husband of a warrior commander. The Kalathari homeworld Vorcath loomed before them, a rust-colored planet ringed with crystalline formations that glittered like jewels. Through the viewport, Kai observed massive floating cities, each suspended by technology he couldn't begin to comprehend. Beside him, Vrisha stood rigid, her face unreadable. During their 3-day journey, she'd maintained distance, speaking only when necessary. Kai had spent the time learning rudimentary Kalathari customs from the ship's database, growing increasingly aware of the political implications of their bond. Your quarters are adjacent to mine, Vrisha said abruptly. Do not speak unless spoken to, do not make eye contact with the matriarch, follow my lead. I understand you're embarrassed. This isn't about embarrassment, she snapped, then softened marginally. The Kalathari conclave has been divided on whether to ally with humans. Half believe your species too weak, too undisciplined for true alliance. She paused. My house leads those who favor cooperation. Understanding dawned, so our bond makes you look compromised, she finished. Subcommander Dravex will challenge the Union. He seeks my position and opposes human alliance. The ship docked with a gentle shudder. Vrisha straightened her ceremonial armor, its plates shifting like liquid metal across her copper skin. For the first time, Kai noticed intricate patterns etched into her forearm, similar to those that had appeared on his own skin where he'd touched her wounds. The mark, he said, raising his arm where faint copper lines now traced his veins. It's permanent. Something flickered in Vrisha's eyes. The healing bond transfers cellular memory. It rarely happens with non-Kalathari, she hesitated. It suggests biological compatibility. Before Kai could process this revelation, the door slid open. 12 Kalathari guards formed a procession, their staffs striking the floor in perfect unison. The great hall of the conclave stretched impossibly high, illuminated by bioluminescent creatures that floated like jellyfish through the air. Hundreds of Kalathari lined the circular chamber, their skin tones ranging from deep bronze to pale gold. At the center, upon an elevated platform, sat the High Matriarch, ancient and regal, her skin bearing thousands of intricate markings that chronicled her life's battles. And beside her stood Subcommander Dravex, his massive frame tense with barely contained rage. Commander Vrisha, the matriarch's voice resonated. You return with unexpected news and, her gaze shifted to Kai, unexpected company. Vrisha knelt and Kai followed suit. Rise, daughter of my house, the matriarch commanded, and you're bonded. Let us see this human who has claimed our finest warrior. Whispers erupted throughout the hall as they approached the platform. Kai felt hundreds of eyes evaluating him, judging his worth. Honored matriarch, Dravex interrupted. This farce cannot stand. A commander of the defense force bonded to an alien herbalist. The union weakens her house and position. The bond was formed through sacred rites, countered Vrisha with dangerous calm. Would you have me abandon tradition, Dravex? The subcommander's eyes narrowed. I challenge the authenticity of this bond. No true connection exists between them. Enough, the matriarch raised a hand. You are dismissed to your quarters. Tonight we feast to evaluate this union. Tomorrow the conclave decides. Later in Vrisha's expansive chambers, Kai paced nervously. This is madness. We barely know each other, yet we're supposed to convince your people we're, what, soulmates. Vrisha emerged from an adjoining room in simpler attire, her armor removed to reveal the lean, powerful body beneath. Without her commander's regalia, she seemed younger, more vulnerable. The bond is not about emotion, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. It is about compatibility, strength, mutual protection. Then why is Dravex so certain he can prove it false? Vrisha approached Kai closer than she'd ever stood before. Because true bonds manifest physically, the marks should spread, there should be, she faltered, other signs. What other signs? Kai asked, suddenly aware of her proximity, the strange warmth radiating from her skin. Instead of answering, Vrisha slowly raised her hand to his face. Where her fingertips met his cheek, tiny sparks of blue electricity crackled between them. Kai gasped at the sensation, not painful but intense, like every nerve ending suddenly awakening. That, she whispered, is unexpected. Without warning, she pressed her forehead to his, an intimate gesture among her people. Images flooded Kai's mind. Vrisha as a child training relentlessly, Vrisha earning her command, Vrisha alone among stars carrying the weight of her people's future. When she pulled away, her expression had transformed. Wonder replaced skepticism, confusion replaced certainty. Our minds connected, she said, voice unsteady. That should be impossible with a human. Kai stared at her, heart racing. Maybe we're more compatible than anyone realized. The feast awaited them, but for a moment, neither moved. Something fundamental had shifted between them, reluctant allies becoming something neither had anticipated. And beyond the chamber walls, Dravex's spies reported what they'd witnessed, setting deadly plans in motion. The banquet hall of the Kalathari conclave pulsed with tension. Hundreds of warriors and dignitaries observed Kai and Vrisha with calculating eyes as they navigated the complex social hierarchy of the feast. Seated at the high table with the matriarch, they endured the scrutiny while sampling exotic foods that shifted colors on their plates. They're watching for any sign of falsity, Vrisha murmured, leaning close. Her breath against his ear sent that now familiar electric tingle down his spine. Bonded pairs move in synchronicity, anticipate each other's needs. Kai nodded subtly, reaching for a crystal decanter the moment Vrisha's cup emptied. The matriarch's eyes narrowed approvingly. Your human learns quickly, she commented, her ancient fingers tracing patterns in the air. Yet Dravex raises valid concerns about his strength. Our warriors bond with equals, daughter. Before Vrisha could respond, Dravex approached their table, his massive frame adorned with battle trophies. A proposal, honored matriarch, he announced, voice carrying across the suddenly silent hall. Since the human claims the right of a Kalathari mate, let him prove his worth through Kurvash. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Vrisha shot to her feet. Absolutely not, he has no combat training. Which proves my point, Dravex smiled coldly. No true warrior would bond with one unable to stand at their side in battle. The matriarch considered this, her ancient eyes unreadable. The challenge is valid under ancient law, does the human accept? All eyes turned to Kai. He had spent enough time studying the database to recognize Kurvash, a ritualized combat that stopped short of death but typically ended in serious injury. I accept, he said before Vrisha could object further. But as I understand Kalathari tradition, I choose the form of challenge. Dravex's confidence faltered momentarily. This is permitted, he conceded. Then I choose botanical identification and application, Kai announced. Unless the subcommander fears a contest of knowledge rather than brute force. A dangerous silence fell across the hall. Challenging a Kalathari warrior's courage was no small provocation. Clever, the matriarch's lips curved slightly, but incomplete. A true Kurvash requires blood risk. I shall modify your proposal. The crystal caverns contain both medicinal plants and deadly predators. You and Dravex will enter unarmed. The first to return with the midnight bloom wins. Later in their chambers, Vrisha paced furiously. This is suicide, she hissed. The crystal caverns have claimed our finest warriors, the predators sense body heat, and Dravex, she faltered. He will not aim merely to win. Kai sat quietly, examining the maps Vrisha had provided. There's always a biological advantage if you understand the ecosystem. Tell me about these predators. Hours later, as Meridian's twin moons reached their apex, Kai and Dravex stood at the cavern entrance. A crowd had gathered to witness the challenge, Vrisha and the matriarch at the forefront. Final words, human, Dravex smirked, confidence restored. Kai turned instead to Vrisha. The worry in her eyes touched something deep within him. Without thinking, he pressed his forehead to hers, initiating the mental connection they'd discovered earlier. I'll return to you, he projected, surprising himself with the intensity of the thought. Her eyes widened as she received it. Before everyone assembled, she grasped his face between her hands and pressed her lips firmly against his, a human gesture she'd clearly studied. Where their mouths met, blue sparks danced visibly, drawing astonished murmurs from the crowd. Return to me, she commanded aloud. The caverns lived up to their name. Crystal formations reflected light in disorienting patterns, creating illusions of paths that didn't exist. Kai moved cautiously, applying the botanical knowledge that had kept him alive on Meridian. He rubbed crystalline dust on his skin, masking his body heat from the predators Vrisha had described. An hour into the caverns, he heard Dravex's triumphant shout, followed by an ominous roar. The warrior had found something, either the bloom or trouble. Kai followed the sounds to find Dravex cornered by a massive crystalline creature, its transparent body pulsing with bioluminescence. Behind the subcommander, nestled in a rock formation, was the unmistakable deep purple of the midnight bloom. Dravex saw Kai and snarled, "This is my victory, human." The creature lunged. Without thinking, Kai grabbed a nearby phosphorescent fungus and hurled it past the predator. The fungus burst, releasing spores that glowed brighter than the crystals themselves. The light-sensitive creature recoiled, temporarily blinded. The exit is 30 degrees to your right, Kai called, circling toward the bloom. It's attracted to heat and movement. Stay still and it will lose interest. Dravex hesitated, clearly torn between escape and continuing the challenge. Your pride worth your life? Kai asked, carefully harvesting the bloom. We can both leave alive. Something shifted in Dravex's expression, respect perhaps, or at least reassessment. When the creature turned toward Kai, drawn by his movement, Dravex created a diversion, allowing Kai to slip past. They emerged from the caverns together as dawn broke, Kai clutching the precious bloom. The assembled Kalathari fell silent, witnessing something unprecedented, cooperation rather than victory. The matriarch stepped forward, who claims the Kurvash. Kai held up the bloom. I harvested it, he said, then nodded to Dravex, but we both survived because we worked together. I claim no victory over the subcommander, only alongside him. Vrisha pushed through the crowd, her eyes finding Kai's. The copper markings on his arm had spread further, now matching patterns on her skin. As their hands touched, the patterns glowed in unison. The bond strengthens, the matriarch observed, and perhaps, she looked between Kai and Dravex, new understandings form as well. In that moment, as Vrisha's fingers intertwined with his, Kai realized he was no longer playing a role. Something profound had changed, within him, within her, and perhaps within the future of their peoples. The days following the Kurvash challenge transformed Kai's standing among the Kalathari. Warriors who had once viewed him with disdain now sought his knowledge of botanical remedies. Even Dravex, though still formal, had become an unexpected ally in the conclave. But it was the transformation between Kai and Vrisha that proved most profound. They stood together on the observation deck of the central citadel, watching as three suns set in sequence, painting Vorcath's sky in impossible colors. Vrisha's hand rested atop his, the matching patterns on their skin pulsing in gentle synchronicity. The conclave votes tomorrow, she said quietly, on both our bond and the human alliance. Kai turned to study her profile, the proud angle of her jaw, the iridescent copper of her skin catching the fading light. In just weeks, she had transformed from intimidating alien warrior to something he couldn't quite define, yet couldn't imagine living without. Are you still embarrassed by our accidental marriage? He asked, only half joking. Vrisha's lips curved slightly, her version of a smile. I was never embarrassed, Kai, I was afraid. The fearless commander Vrisha afraid. Of change, she admitted, turning to face him fully. Of feeling, our warriors spend lifetimes learning to channel emotion into combat to see attachment as weakness. Her fingers traced the patterns on his arm. Then you arrived, gentle yet stronger than any warrior I've known. You heal instead of harm. You seek understanding instead of victory. She stepped closer, those amber eyes searching his. You've changed me, Kaya Vander, and perhaps I have changed you. For the better, he whispered, realizing the truth of it. His solitary existence on Meridian now seemed empty in retrospect, his cataloging of plants purposeless without someone to share the discoveries. Her forehead touched his, and their now familiar mental connection bloomed, stronger than ever before. Emotions flowed between them, her admiration of his courage, his awe at her fierce loyalty, and something deeper, unnamed but unmistakable growing between them. When they separated, Vrisha's expression had softened. There is a ceremony if you wish it, not for the conclave or politics but for us alone. A true bonding entered freely rather than by accident. The chamber Vrisha led him to later that night lay deep within the citadel, illuminated only by bioluminescent crystals. Steam rose from a pool carved into the stone floor, the water infused with minerals that shimmered in the dim light. The waters of revelation, Vrisha explained, her voice hushed with reverence. They show truth between potential mates. She began unfastening her ceremonial armor, each piece removed with deliberate care. Kai watched, mesmerized, as more of her copper skin was revealed, the intricate patterns covering her shoulders, down her spine, across the lean muscle of her abdomen. Your turn, she said, eyes challenging yet vulnerable. Heart racing, Kai shed his adapted Kalathari garments. Standing bare before her felt less like exposure and more like honesty. The markings that had begun on his arm now stretched across his chest, mirroring some of her patterns. They entered the pool together, the warm water enveloping them in mineral-scented steam. Where their skin touched beneath the surface, blue luminescence spread through the water. The final bonding requires truth, Vrisha murmured, moving closer until their bodies aligned. No diplomatic necessity, no accident of cultural misunderstanding, only choice. I choose you, Kai said simply, his hands finding her waist beneath the water. I didn't expect to find someone across the stars, but I can't imagine returning to life without you. The warrior's composure broke then. Vrisha's arms encircled him, her lips finding his with newfound urgency. Where they touched, energy sparked between them, visible now blue electricity dancing across their skin, connecting the patterns that marked them both. Their kiss deepened, bodies pressing together as if seeking to eliminate any remaining space between their worlds. The water around them glowed brighter with each touch, each discovery. Vrisha's strength tempered with unexpected tenderness, Kai's gentleness carrying surprising passion. My people have a saying, she whispered against his neck, the universe bonds what belongs together across any distance. Her hands mapped his body as if committing it to memory. I believe this now. Their union in the sacred waters transcended physical connection, minds linked, sharing every sensation, every emotion multiplied between them. The patterns on their skin glowed like constellations, completing circuits between their bodies as they moved together in ancient rhythm. Afterward they floated entwined, the water cooling around them. Vrisha's head rested on his chest, her fierce exterior softened in the aftermath of intimacy. What happens tomorrow? Kai asked, fingers tracing the patterns along her spine. The conclave will ratify our bond, she said with newfound certainty. Dravex now supports the human alliance. Your actions in the cavern proved more persuasive than years of political maneuvering. And after that? Vrisha raised herself to meet his gaze. We have choices, my command here, your research on Meridian, perhaps something between both worlds. The morning brought formal proceedings, the conclave chamber filled beyond capacity as Vrisha and Kai stood before the matriarch. Their matching attire, half-human practical, half-Kalathari ceremonial, symbolized the bridge they had become. The conclave recognizes the bond of Commander Vrisha and Kaya Vander, the matriarch announced, her ancient voice carrying to every corner. Furthermore, we appoint them joint ambassadors to establish the first permanent Kalathari human cooperative settlement on Meridian. Approving murmurs filled the chamber. From his position of honor, Dravex inclined his head respectfully. The warrior finds wisdom, the matriarch continued, looking directly at Vrisha. And the healer finds strength. Together you demonstrate what our peoples might become. Later, as their transport prepared for departure to Meridian, Kai stood at the viewport watching Vorcath recede. Vrisha's arms encircled him from behind, her chin resting on his shoulder. Having regrets about your solitude, she asked. Kai turned in her embrace, taking in the face that had transformed from alien to beloved. None, he said truthfully, though I expect my quiet days of plant cataloging are over. Replaced by diplomatic missions, cultural exchange, and a warrior spouse who still struggles with human customs. Vrisha raised an eyebrow, humor dancing in those amber eyes. Replaced by purpose, Kai corrected, pressing his forehead to hers one more time. In the mental connection that flowed between them, he shared images of their future, a settlement where humans and Kalathari worked together, gardens where both worlds' plants grew side by side, and at the center, a home where two improbable companions had found something neither knew they sought. As the ship accelerated toward Meridian, the patterns on their skin pulsed in perfect unison, a visible reminder that sometimes, the universe knows better than we do what our hearts truly need.